everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It always feels so good to have a full house, and even better when it's all really powerful women. I actually took a peek at the invite list, and it's a really, really incredible group of people. And I don't feel like an imposter here at all. So since I have a lot to learn from these talks today, we will not take up too much of your time, but we did figure that some of you might be curious about where you are today. So just show of hands, how many of you had heard of Grand Rounds prior to hearing about this event? Not the people who work here. So not very many of you. How many of you work in health tech? Not very many of you, or none of you other than the ones from Grand Rounds. So let me give you a little bit of background, and I'll start with our co-founder's story. So one of our co-founders, his name is Rusty Hoffman. He is the head of interventional radiology at Stanford. Trained at Johns Hopkins, has invented most of the key technology in his field, really a brilliant and very, very well-connected physician. Rusty is the father of 3 boys, and one day he noticed that one of his sons, Grady's, eyes were really, really yellow. It turned out that he had a severe autoimmune condition of his liver, and they had to go through lots and lots of back and forth to figure out what was happening and what the best treatment would be for Grady. At one point in the treatment trajectory, they decided that a bone marrow transplant was going to be necessary. And they looked around for matches, and it so happened that Rusty, the father, was the best match. For this particular condition, a parental donor can actually cause a lot of potential complications. And so they had a pretty rough decision that they had to make about whether they were going to go through with the transplant or not. I don't know how many of you in the room are parents. I happen to be one. When it comes to your children, you do everything humanly possible to get them to the best care. And so that's what Rusty did. He started calling around, and he was able to find, through his network, the leading expert in this particular condition. And this person had actually happened to do research, and it was not even yet published, that had data that really did help the treatment decision for Grady. They followed that, and now Grady is better. He's leading a full and complete life, a happy, healthy child. And so that's kind of where the whole concept of Grand Rounds came. Rusty basically realized that he, the head of interventional radiology at Stanford, had access to figuring out who the leading expert was and actually could get that person on the phone. Who else in the world has that ability? Very, very few people. And so the idea behind Grand Rounds is to bring that Rusty power to everybody. So much of our daily lives are informed with so much data. You know, how we pick what TV show to watch, or what new tech gadget to buy, or what restaurant to eat at. But when it comes to some of the most important decisions in our lives, in our families' lives, we're really empowered with very, very little information. And, you know, we don't know what type of provider we need to see, or who's going to have the best judgment, or who's going to drive the best results. And honestly, in this extremely complicated healthcare system, oftentimes we don't even know where to start. So Grand Rounds is, you know, really trying to increase the quality of healthcare for everyone, everywhere. And we do this through a number of different services. Everything from, you know, helping patients who are healthy today to patients with very, very complex healthcare needs. Everything from services like just, you know, I need a new insurance ID card, to holding your hand through a long and very complicated healthcare journey. Through our application, we can help provide customized recommendations for your individual healthcare needs. We can help you get on the phone with a provider. We can even help with your financial and billing questions. For those who have more complex needs, we've got a care team of hundreds of personnel who are just clinicians and care coordinators who are on the phone with our patients, trying to get them to the most appropriate physicians, get them remote expert second opinions, and much more. And that's really why I love being at Grand Rounds. It's going to be 5 years next month. And I've stayed entirely for that, the impact that we have on our patients. Actually, this pin that I'm wearing right now, the smiley face, it was given, one of these pins was given to every single person in our company by one of our patients because she was so touched by how we enhanced her healthcare journey. So yeah, it's the impact that we're having on individuals' lives. It's the fact that this is an incredibly hard space to work in from a technical point of view, but for me, that's fun.
Thank you so much, Jayadita and Megan. So our topic tonight is imposter syndrome. How many of you in the audience have experienced this phenomenon? Yes, surprisingly, it's very common. So we have 3 fantastic speakers who will share their experience and actionable insights for growing through these challenges and that are brought on by insecurities and the feelings of imposter phenomenon. I have the pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Lily Chang. Lily is VP of Engineering at VMware, where she leads the VMware Strategic Transformation Office. She is a board member of VMware's China joint venture and a board member of Women Who Code. Lily is recognized as one of the 39 most powerful female engineers of 2018 by Business Insider. Woo! Welcome, Lily.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I'm very honored to be here. And I will first tell you a little bit about my family's reaction when I accepted the invitation. So I told them, hey, I'm coming to San Francisco. I'm giving a great talk to a great bunch of women leaders, right? My kids asked me saying, what is the talk's topic? I say, imposter syndrome. They look back at me and say, that says something about you, Mom. So I decided I will feature them first. So let me first tell you a little bit of a story about both my kids by sharing with you some story about me. Both of my kids were adopted. I adopted them as a single mother. And I actually went through a lot of escalation to China government in order to adopt my son, because it's considered very unconventional. In Chinese culture, it's always believed the children will grow better with 2 parents, a mother and a father. So even the regulation, I read the book really well, it does not prohibit a single mother adoption. But I actually went through escalation call with Chinese government when this government official told me saying, you are really not quite a fit. And I basically said, look, I got your published book. I'm going to hold you accountable. So you're going to give me my kid. And it better be a healthy one. And then I remember his response was say, well, if I don't, what would you do? I said, I got an airline ticket on my hand. I'm flying to Beijing. I got an appointment with you in person. I'm going to petition. And the next day I got a call from the adoption agency and say, we don't know what you did. By the way, at that time, I was waiting for my son's adoption approval for 3 years. And then they say, we don't know what happened, but you got approved. And you're getting your son within a couple weeks. And basically, it was considered very unusual because most adoption is with girls. So they asked me, said, why do you want a boy? I said, well, that's my decision. It's not yours, right? And the truth to be told is that I really like to basically get to 50-50. So my son was my step 1. Now, I made a very crucial decision because I read the profile. I had 24 hours to decide. He was a premature. He was born less than 4 pounds. He was abandoned at birth. He was so small, the street cleaning person thought it was kind of a little garbage, right? But he moved, so they realized it was a live human being. That's how my son got into the orphanage. So I'm very blessed with my son. One of the things I would talk about him is he dares to be himself. Let me first tell you a little bit about myself. I love a flower arrangement. So the gentleman that actually told me about there's actually a banana in the arrangement. I'm a flower teacher. It took me 10 years to get Ikebana first level of teacher's degree. And I just recently told my master that I will be promoted to the second level of teachers. But that took me another 5 years. So it's 15 years of journey, right? From the beginner's degree. Now, most boys are not going to learn flower arrangement, right? So I basically want to spend quality time with my kid. So I proposed to my son and say, I'd like you to learn flower arrangement. He stared back at me and said, well, let me think about it. He's actually very artistic and he's very talented, but he doesn't want to put in work for his talent. So his music teacher told me he's one of the few students that actually can see 2 notebooks at the same time, meaning he can see a songbook and a piano book. Very few people have a split brain like that and can do a good job. But he doesn't want to learn singing. He doesn't want to learn piano. So I decided that maybe I can convince him as a mom to learn about flower arrangement. And I want to show you that one of these work is actually his work. He's on his way to get the first beginner certificate. And he's been in the class every Saturday with me for about 3 years. And so basically for a boy, that's a very unusual decision. He's the only boy in the class. However, I do believe that a very successful person in the engineering world is always someone that has a combination skill of art and engineering. So I believe that human brain is born with 2 spheres, and I believe that's medically proven as well, or at least some field says that's medically proven. So it's good to actually get your kid to be stimulus in both spheres, right? But the difference here is he made a conscious decision to actually embark on an area that most boys would not embark on. He actually set a goal. He says to me, he said, Mom, by the next annual flower show arrangement, I want to get my certificate from Japan. So I want to share his story with you, right? Now, with my daughter, that's a very interesting story. That's my daughter over there, right? So she's also adopted. When my son was 3 years old, we traveled to China. My son suffered from this syndrome of like, okay, now I got to share my love. I'm not very thrilled about that. So he decided he'd bring all his Godzilla, his trucks, blah, 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 right? Even you that went through adoption journey like I do, you know it's a tough 3 weeks journey. You travel throughout the entire China for that, right? In order to really receive the kid you want, right? So on every stop in the hotel, they know we were adopted parents, right? At that time, my husband was just my boyfriend. He's trying to be nice to me, so he accompanied me to the journey. Probably is his preparation work for the proposal. But in any case, right? What really impressed me about my daughter was we get to the one of the most gorgeous hotel in Guangzhou, at White Swan Hotel. They gave a special gift. It was the most gorgeous Barbie doll house with Barbies and clothing, everything. My daughter did not take it. My daughter saw my son playing the truck and the Godzilla. She started crying over and play the truck and the Godzilla. So we end up donating the gorgeous Barbie doll because she was totally disinterested in the doll because my son was totally disinterested in the doll. And my daughter did not even take any interest in any doll until she was like maybe 7 or 8 years old. Then she realized all the girls around her play dolls, right? She's the only girl that played trucks and the guns and the Godzillas and the dinosaurs, right? So that's one thing that I want to share with you is kids are not yet contaminated by what your environment tells you how you should behave. They behave with their intuition, what they want to be. My daughter wants to be a friend with her brother. She realized by instinct, human instinct, that he is only interested in trucks and Godzilla and dinosaurs. That's it. So the only way she can get attention or time with him is to cultivate interest in that. So it's environmental impact, but it's a conscious decision she made, right? She also, by the way, she also does flower arrangement. I'm going to leave you as an exercise about which one is actually made by whom, right? But anyway, I want to share with you about their story because a lot of time, the trick of conquering imposter syndrome that I learned from the reverse mentoring from my kids to me is you need to be willing to be yourself. Sometimes you have to be willing to go back to the basic, right? And that, the older you get, the harder it gets, right? Now, let me share a little bit about a story about myself. The place I grew up is a little tropical island called Taiwan. The era I grew up is very different, right? I graduated from the best university in the island. And it's very difficult because the entrance exam, how Chinese treats kids' education, everything, right? And basically, there were only 2 types of jobs I could get, right? And quoting my dad, he was investing on me, okay? Because a lot of parents, basically at the era I was growing up in the island, invest on their daughters. Basically, it's kind of like a dowry because it increases your portfolio. So it looks good when you're somebody's wife, right? But here's the problem. The problem with me was my gene. When my mom was pregnant with me, everybody thought she was pregnant with a twin. So, but only me pops out. So, and when I was a couple months old, she took me to a baby contest. Most of the contestants was 1 year old or older. And guess what? I win the championship. So that tells you I was born with a bad gene, okay? And also in the typical standards that you kind of have to be really like good with music and good with a whole bunch of things. So it's classically elegant, right? I'm really not that classical elegant. My mom is a very different woman compared with the woman that we were growing up at, right? She basically was the person that saved the money so that she can actually go to university and go to college to make sure she gets what she wants and the job what she wants to do. So she has a very different notion about how women should be than what the society should be. I was very blessed with my parents and my father included, right, to invest on me. But I have some social flaws, okay? First is the fat gene. The other problem is I never pass my musical test. I always get a D or an F. And my musical teacher always said, well, how do we not give you an F, right? I got to figure out some way. I'm not athletic and all these things. So the 2 jobs that you can get by being graduate from the best university and the best department with a high straight A grade is 2 jobs. one is a secretary, and one is an airline stewardess. So in the university, I learned different things. So I'm a horrible typist. I don't do shorthand well. I absolutely do not take orders very well. So I flunk every job interview on secretary job. And so basically I remember this is one interview I never forget. Some of my friends, we decided that we will go apply for an airline stewardess job. That is one interview in my entire life. I was not asked a single question. It's completely wordless. So what we did is we doll up, we dress up the best, and it has a stage a little bit longer than this. So what we do is we walk around. And that's it. And the reality is, with all my social flaws, I did not get a job. And so basically, there I was, right? I kind of wasted my dad's investment, right? He has his own business. He's an accountant. He always made sure how much he invested on me. So he didn't know what to do. So my mom made a proposition to my dad. She said, well, because most business people, as some of the people over here, maybe business people will say, well, maybe it's time to cut your losses, right? But my mom said, no, you are going to invest more because this place is the wrong place for Lily. She needs to be exported to the United States. I checked. That is the right place for her. She should be able to get admission into university, into graduate school. My dad said graduate school. And you're talking about foreign student fee, right? So basically, God bless my dad. Next morning, he came over to me and said, you know what? It's pretty bad. You could not find a single job. And so maybe the right thing to do is for you to apply for some United States schools and figure out what you should do next, right? So this is probably the best decision they made for me. And the best decision I made was to say yes. So one of the things that I will want to share with you is to conquer the imposter syndrome is to embrace the change and to embrace the failure. I could not be more a failure than anybody else at that moment, right? I could not find any job at all. Nobody wants me in the entire country. So basically, that was the only choice. My parents come to rescue, and that was the best yes I ever said in my entire life. Because I love this country, and I love everything about United States, and this is where I build my career. So I want to share that story with you. And I want to share some of this with you. So you can see this is actually me. I work really hard to lose weight, but I couldn't keep it off. So let me share a little bit of my career journey with you, right? So over there is a picture that's probably a memorial picture. It's the very first NCC++ committee meeting. I actually bothered to count it before this talk. There were 4 women out of 46 people. So there's definitely Bjarnar over there. There's Jerry Schwartz, who wrote the complex library and stuff like that. So in this group, what I learned through the giants of these technology, because I was trying to be the best technologist, right? I want to be able to prove that I'm an expert, because I wrote at that time more than 20 compilers. I feel like I debug Bjarnar's code. I really should be entitled in this, right? What all these giants has taught me is you don't have to be the best technologist to be part of a winning team. You have to be the best complementary value add. I actually brought value to that 46 people team, right? And so the skill I brought in wasn't the greatest language extension, was basically my go-to-market skill in terms of what is practical, right? The other thing that I want to share with you is this picture. Because in my career journey, there was a coworker. He made a very harsh comment to me. And it really hurt in the beginning. He basically said, you know, you girls really cannot deal with hard work. You just freeze when you come to it. And I was thinking, who are you? Your code depends on the compiler I wrote for the microprocessor and depends on the optimizer I wrote in order to run the best. I got mad for a while. Then I realized he actually got a reasonable point. I could not do anything associated with hardware, right? Even though I understand microprocessor and all these things. So I decided to change field. I went into semiconductor field for about 10 years and I wear bunny suits. I learned there are 250 fabs in the world at that time. I visited about 1/3 of them, right? I work for a company called KLA-Tencor, and their claim of fame is they ship software engineer with their prototype machine in order to make it really work. And basically, on my day one on the job, what I learned from the VP of operations is we were in a huge escalation call with a Japanese customer. I'm not going to mention the name. And then I was listening to it. I said, look, this cannot be a software problem and blah, blah, blah. Then the VP of operation got really mad and he muted the phone and said, look, you need to understand in KLA, anything that moves, including the air, is a software problem. So this thing obviously moves. So it's your problem. So then I realized, okay, let me get this straight. So the robotic arm is my problem. The stage movement is my problem. You know, I was thinking, geez, what kind of job am I getting here, right? I'm a software person. But then I realized the reason I got into this field is because I want to understand the unknown, right? So I spent about 10 years, I will have to say, it's very rewarding, right? I learned about the system aspect. And then when I did an intro inspection, I feel like, oh my God, people is going to think I'm a hardware person. Even today in VMware, one of the SVP, actually one of our CEOs says, well, Lily, I look at your profile, I think you're a hardware person. No, I'm not a hardware person. I can never design any tape out to save my life, right? So that's the reason why I jumped back into the software industry, and VMware was the best company that I choose. The story I want to share with you to be the last story is I'm actually the first employee that moved from R&D organization to CFO finance organization in VMware's 25 years of history. I might still be the only one. And the reason for that jump is because what I wanted to do after decades of the software and system engineering, I really want to be able to learn about doing business. But I want to be able to leverage my skill. So the strategic transformation office was the best choice I have. So I applied for many jobs in VMware as a VP. And I basically told the company I refuse to be demoted. And that became a very tough job. And I remember the profound interview I have with my current boss, Chief Accounting Officer. He's one of the executive staff. I wrote a proposal. I was very well prepared. Everybody in the E staff helped me to prepare that proposal. They all thought I'm going to pass with flying colors, right? So this is how the first 5 minutes go. So I sat down, my boss was friendly and say, hey, Lily, tell me what you can do for me. Very innocent question, right? I started telling him, say, you know, Kevin, I don't really know. I cannot close the book for you. It's really not very good in math, right? I don't know about accounting. I really don't know how to do balance sheet. He just looked at me, listened for about 3 minutes, and he said, look, do you realize this is an interview? And then I said, yeah, I do. Then he said, okay, let me ask you again. what can you do for me? You wrote a proposal. So I started telling him more things I cannot do. He finally said, look, let me give you a hint. How about you start by telling me what you can really do for me and not what you could not do for me? Because I can tell by your resume what you cannot do for me. But I want you to think about what you can do for me. So that was where the beginning of the interview. So I want to share with you about that story is because a lot of times when we actually apply for jobs, doesn't matter how experienced or seasoned you are, you have this sense of like, I am not quite right for this job, right? We have to let that go. I was extremely fortunate with my current boss. He basically won't let me get away with that. He gave me 3 shots. Good thing I didn't flunk the 3rd time, right? In 5 minutes. So what I want to part with you is the way to basically conquer your insecurity is first to recognize you do have it, right? Second is not to be afraid to take that plunge and to think about what you could do, right? Because all these stories I'm sharing with you is precisely that. And I think the last slide I'm probably going to skip because I will always encourage you, right, to get your balance in life is don't forget your passion. To me, my passion is here, right? Because I want to be able to help technical women to succeed. Because in my past many decades that I grow up, I have so many people that help me out. To me, I believe in karma and giving back. So to me, this is my passion. So I'm very grateful to have an opportunity to share with you about my experience today.
Thank you so much, Lily. Our next speaker is Wade Chambers, CTO and Senior Vice President of Engineering at Ground Rounds, where he leads all aspects of engineering and technology innovation. Wade has over 25 years of leadership experience and a successful track record of scaling teams.
That sounds scary.
And that's at companies including Twitter, Telepart, Yahoo, and Opsware prior to Ground Rounds. Before Silicon Valley, Wade served in the military and in the White House Situation Room. Thank you so much for joining us, Wade.
Yes. I think that as you go through your career, right, like there's just, it seems like it's one challenge after another. And you constantly are sort of battling your way up. And there's this thing of where you're constantly like, if I can just get one step forward and I can move up, and it's, you struggle to go through it. And it's like always that thing of like, what's holding me back? What's the thing that I need to do better? And for me, it always felt like, do I belong? Right? Like there's this good old boys club out there, and they're sitting in the leather seats, and they are judging everything about everyone. And it's like, do you fit in? Are you good enough? Are you all of those things? And like, I wasn't. This is a literal picture of my back door growing up. I grew up in my high school years in southeastern Missouri. I think my parents, in their peak earning year, between the two of them working full-time, made $35,000. And like, that was an amazing year. My father, my stepfather, he had a 2nd grade education. Like, if you kind of think through what that means, like, my mom had me when she was 20, my stepfather was in there. Neither one of them were conscious parents. Neither one of them could like think about like, how do we give back pressure? How do we grow this young human to be ready for the world? How should we have him think about education? How should we think about, have him think about like how he moves through his life? All of those sort of things, right? Like me starting out, no, I just knew I wanted to get away. I did not want to live that life that my parents was living. And so I ran away. Like Funny story, but true story. The working at the White House. I actually managed to claw my way in there a little bit. And I was from southeastern Missouri, and I'm talking, and we started talking about something, and I'm like, how do you spell capacity? And my coworker was like, what was that word? And I'm like, capacity, like how much will fit in the bowl? Like, what's the capacity of the bowl? And oh my God, she fell down laughing and like literally was on the floor laughing. And I have never felt so small in my life, right? But like in southeastern Missouri, like everybody said capacity. Like, capacity was a thing, right? Like everybody's just talked that way. And so like, yeah, that's where I came from. And so like when I started thinking through my life and like how I was going to move forward, right? Like I kind of wasn't set up to like go knock on the door and like have that experience of where like people said, oh, you are definitely one of those. I definitely, taught myself how to program. I never went to college. I don't have a degree. I'm the CTO of a company. I've been this SVP an executive VP of engineering of public companies. I've never had a degree. Like everything I've done, I've like had to teach myself. Imagine sitting, Jayodita and Megan are both brilliant. Like they are brilliant people. And yet like every time I look at Jayodita, she's got a PhD. She scares the shit out of me. Right? Like she is like wicked intelligent. And I know she is always like, dude, I will take you down. And so like every time I got a new job and I was working my way up, right? Like that was my starting point. And like, how do I have a discussion around like, what's the right abstraction or separation of responsibilities or any of those types of things? Like that was not a thing that was built into me. And so what I started out from was like, I had this thought like, everybody else in the world is brilliant and I am the stupidest shit in the world. And what I realized is that over time, of course, that's not true, right? Like I have a set of things that I'm good at, and like everybody else has a set of things that they're good at, and sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. You're talking about being a baby. I was 12 pounds when I was born. My mom jokes I drove home. It's true. It's actually true. But, right, like you start to learn this and you realize that like you know things and other people know things. It's like you can get to some place of where you're okay with that. And then you realize for growth, I've got to kind of like learn what other people know. I now need to go onto their turf and like they know some things and I'm not going to be as comfortable as they are in the area that like they have wisdom and depth and I don't. Every time that happens, right? Like I just get this anxiety about like what I need to go and encounter. And like the real thing is like people offered me lots of advice as I was going through this. And it's like, dude, just fake it. Fake it till you make it. Like you'll be good. And I was like, wow, like really? Is that a thing? You just fake it till you make it? I don't know if everybody else is looking at this and like, no, that's not quite right. And like what I realize is like going through a lot of this is that there's a bad version of this. And it's when I am trying to create an impression that like I want you to pay attention to my projection as opposed to who I am. There's a good version of fake it till you make it too, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But like what I don't want is like any time that you feel like that sense of I am trying to create an illusion of who I am, and I'm going to work very hard to maintain that illusion, it never lasts. I think there's a better way. And I think that if you can focus how you go through things, right? Like you can actually have a way that you can work through the discomfort and you can get on the other side and actually be really talented and fill in those knowledge gaps of where you're at. And I think there's really two areas. There's one of like acting as if, and then there's the other side of getting your 20. I'm going to start with the second one first. If you go through, Josh Kaufman actually has a good TED Talk. He also has a book, right? If you like all the details, read the book. If you want to know the gist of it, listen to the TED Talk. It's on YouTube. It's going to take you about 7 minutes. And sorry, Josh, but like it'll give you most of the content that you need for this. And it really can help shortcut this. But in it, he basically makes this point of there are diminishing returns when you get way out here. But like if you focus in a certain way, right, like you can actually get from unconscious incompetence to like actually pretty decent at something with conscious practice in about 20 hours, less than a week. And so if you focus on like, okay, how do I go through this? Like there's a chance that you can actually get pretty good at something pretty quick. And the way that, Megan will laugh at me for this, but like I normally don't say, can you give a TED Talk? She coached me on that because I used to say, can you brew beer? And that didn't seem to translate as well. But like, if you think about this, right? Like, can you give a TED Talk? I mean, a good TED Talk, not an average TED Talk. And hopefully when I say that, it's just like, yeah, I've seen them, but no, I'm not sure quite how I would do that. And right? Like, okay, we just moved you from being unconsciously incompetent to now consciously incompetent and like how to give a TED Talk. Okay, but could you give a TED Talk? Yeah, you probably could, right? Like, how would you do that? Well, like I'd watch a few of them. I would read a book about it. I might like listen to some podcasts. I would talk about somebody who knows how to do TED Talks. And what that would give you is like declarative knowledge, right? It would give you this sense of like, okay, I know what to do, but does that mean you know how to do it? No, it means you know how to talk about it. Well, how do you do it? Well, I would have to practice. I would have to try. And as you go through that, like neuroplasticity is a thing, right? Like as you struggle through something, synapses form connections. The more that you use those, the more they widen, the more that they allow information to go back and forth. The more that you practice, the more comfortable you become with something. It is like this working through things that kind of gets you over here. If you get that 20 hours of practice in, well, now you're sort of in this quadrant over here where like, okay, I'm still writing notes and I have to keep a journal and all of these sort of things, but like it's working. It kind of works. Spend 10,000 hours and like all of a sudden you're a master of something. Well, I guess you'd never say all of a sudden if you're talking about 10,000 hours, but you get my point, right? And so you can get out here, like you probably don't think about driving anymore. Yeah, you've just done it so long and so many times. It's just second nature and you get through here, right? And so like there's this whole thing of where you get down here, you're going to practice a lot and then you're going to get back up here. And that is because 70% of how you learn is this practice. 20% is like, who's that person that's helping you? That person who has some mastery, the person that you believe, the person you can connect with and communicate with. Only 10% of it is that formal understanding. Okay, well, just like understanding that as a concept, you can start to like think about how you might approach something, right? Like if I can get to a point of where I can practice something with somebody that I kind of trust, and I can get formal understanding all over the place. It still amazes me to this day that people will spend 20 to 30 years studying something, condense it, edit it, publish it, and I can buy it for $12.99. Right? Like I can spin up the speed and like it's like having a master class by all the great people in the world, and it's there for $12.99. It's fantastic. So as you think through this, right? Like okay, for me to actually go and have directed growth, I just need to figure out the best way for me to understand something. I just need to figure out like who's the most believable person that I could go talk to and get feedback from this. And then I just need to figure out like, what's the best way to go practice this? Record scratch there, right? Like this all makes sense, but it assumes that I would be comfortable in each and every one of these things, right? Like This, I'm probably, because no one needs to see me do this, right? I can go read my book. I can listen to my podcast. Maybe it's somebody I trust. I can Google it. I can do all these types of things. Oh, crap, right? Like, I need to go talk to somebody. That's hard. I have to expose myself a little bit. Like when I go out and ask, hey, Shadi, right? Like, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me out? I'd love to just pick your brain on this for a little bit, et cetera. And this whole thing of like, what am I going to practice on? Like, somebody's going to give me feedback. Somebody's going to judge me as I go through that, right? Like that gets hard. Well, that's where I think the other side of this comes in. Like, I love this. I don't necessarily cherish him as a human, but like, I love the quote in that, and he was trying to figure out like how to get through things and how to struggle things. Like, he would actually go out and say, look, it took a lot for me to just like, you know what? I just had to go act as if. I needed to figure out that thing that was holding me back and be able to work through it. You can Google acting as if, and one of the sites that I found out there, source down there, actually did a pretty good job of breaking this down. If you can identify the automatic thought or dysfunctional belief that is getting in your way, right? Like that idea of being able to recognize it, right? Then if I can recognize that, then it starts to lose its power just a little bit, right? Like I can start to understand like what it is, and I can evaluate it for truth. And if I can identify all of the things that you would do if you believed exactly the opposite of that thought, I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough. They're not going to believe me anyhow. I'm not ever going to be able to learn that. Right? Like if I can just stop that space between the stimulus and response, and I can actually start to substitute it with something that allows me to think of it from a different angle. Well, what if I was smart enough? Right? Like, how would I approach this? Well, like I probably would engage. I would do things. What if I could rehearse those behaviors? Like, and this is not to have an illusion. This is for me to actually get past my discomfort, to be able to go start practicing, to ask somebody to help me with something, right? Then I can rehearse some more, and then I can go and engage in those things. Hey, Shadi, like, I know you are a friggin' expert at this, and like, I want to get good at this. I don't think it's going to take me a lot of time, but like, can you help me with this? I'd love to get started with this, right? Then maybe you can work through some of that discomfort to be able to get on the other side of this and actually start engaging in some of those things. Right? So instead of trying to maintain the illusion and getting people to like fake it till you make it, right? If I can get to the point where I can act as if I'm confident, I can act as if I got this, I can act as if it's not bothering me. If I can act as if all of these things, then I can actually get to the other side, work through the formal understanding to get to a point where I've got somebody helping me work through this, and get to the point where I actually practice, get my 20 hours in. And there's this funny thing that happens. After a period of time, 20 hours, they're like, I don't need to act anymore. I'm actually like, I got this. I feel like I know the basics of it. I know the mechanics of it, and it's actually working out pretty well for me. Right? So my thing is like, I had to spend a lot of time getting to the point where I understood how to learn, and like to be able to work through my discomfort to get on the other side of this. Hopefully there's something in there that connects with one of you and like you can use as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Pleasure to introduce our final speaker, Shadi Rassami, the SVP of Engineering at Amplitude. Prior to Amplitude, she worked at Palo Alto Networks as VP of Engineering. She has a PhD in computer engineering from the University of British Columbia and a BSc from Sharif University of Technology. Welcome, Shadi.
Thank you. The speaker. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. We had great speakers, and it's hard to come after them, but I'll do my best. I'm an imposter, especially today. So I'll tell you in a bit. So let me first tell you a little bit about my journey, my path, from when I grew up till being here, and then I can tell you the secrets of my imposterness. So I was born in Tehran, Iran, to a middle-class family. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a math teacher, but for some reason, he wanted me to be a doctor. Maybe he just didn't like math as much, even though he was teaching it. And he actually pushed my brother. My brother is a doctor. So when you are in Iran, in 9th grade, you have to pick your path. Whether you're going to the path that gets you to medical school, or whether you go to the path that gets you to art, or get to the path that gives you to engineering. So I actually went to the path of medical school for a year and a half, and then I realized I cannot. This is not what I can do, and I basically went and cried to my principal of my school, and eventually, my dad, actually, he always said that I never forced you, I persuaded you. But that person, I eventually was able to tell him that, okay, let me go back. So I went back to the path of being in the math and physics. And it's funny, growing in Iran, in a very patriarchal society, you're always being told to your face that women are not as good as men. They tell you you're not as good, you're not as smart, they don't treat you the same way. But the good thing was that as a teenager, you want to rebel. So I said, okay, I'm going to rebel against that. I wish my kids do the same thing, but no, they're not doing that. So I rebelled against that, and I actually was the first girl in Iran who went to there was a competition among high school students called Olympiads. So it has math, physics, computer, chemistry, and I was the first girl in Iran who was part of the team who went to the international computer in informatics, in computer. So I went to that, and to Sweden. This was very exciting. The first time I left Iran, everything looked so clean and shiny. Even to this day, I go to the mall, it doesn't feel that way. But even US, maybe Sweden. I've never been back to Sweden since then. Maybe I should go and try. Maybe they're cleaner and nicer. I don't know. But I went there. I came back, and I went to after I went to undergraduate degree. I got my undergrad in computer science. And as Lily was telling, that the situation of, do I want to stay? It's all comfortable. My mom is here, or shall I go for an adventure? So I decided to go for an adventure. I went to Vancouver. I did my PhD at the University of British Columbia. And after that, again, another point in my life, whether I should stay in academia, go to industry. I said, no, I like to solve real customer problems. So maybe I should go to industry. And I was talking to a couple of people, and they had similar experiences. I went and worked in a number of startups, and they didn't make it. And, I didn't stay till the end of it. So somebody told me that they gave them a 15-minute time. Yes, they gave them a 15-minute time before they closed the office. So they had to find a way. Mine was not as bad. I left 6 months before they ran out. But it was a great learning experience being in that environment. I'm really happy I went through that. So I went through that and, started my career, and then I joined Palo Alto Networks. It's a company down in South Bay, and I joined when we were 30 people. We have a great partnership with VMware, so you probably know. So I joined when we were a very small company, 30 people, and I grew with the company. When I left, my team was more than 100 people, and the company was 6,000 people. So this was a great ride. I really enjoyed it. But then later I said, okay, what is next for me? How can I grow more? And I said, okay, it's an amazing company. I've grown a lot. And I stayed there for 11 years. And actually, when I left, a lot of my friends told me that, we thought you were a lifer. I said, it was not a life sentence. It was a job. But I left there, and I went through my journey, figuring out what I want to do. And then a few months ago, I joined Amplitude, and I'm very excited to be there. So that's my journey, so you know what I meant. But I actually want to share a secret with you, why I'm an imposter. So I went on vacation on 4th of July. I went to France. I'm having fun, and I received an email from Wade that there is this conference about women and leadership, and do you want to give a talk? And because I'm very passionate about the topic of women and leadership, I respond late, but by the time I got to a point that I can respond, I said, yes, definitely. I'm going to come and I'm going to be part of that conference. I'm very excited. So then I responded, and then I came home and I read the actual email properly, and it said imposter syndrome. Oh my God, I don't know anything about imposter syndrome. I'm a nerd geek. I don't know anything about psychology. How can I go and talk about imposter syndrome? I was thinking of maybe I should go and say I'm going to be sick. I'm going to cancel that. And then actually there was something that somebody said we're going to change the date. Maybe I said, no, I cannot make it. I could only make it that day. But then I said, no, I'm going to go for it. And on top of all of these, so that's why I feel like an imposter. I'm not an expert on the topic by any sort of imagination. We had a lot of board meeting in the past few weeks and a lot of work, so I really couldn't look at and, do anything. So on Monday morning, I know that we have a meeting in the afternoon to talk about the conference, and I haven't done anything, and I need to prepare. So I said, okay, that's okay. It's Monday morning, and I haven't done procrastinated a lot. I haven't done anything over the weekend. But I'm going to do research on the Uber ride. So I did a research on the Uber ride to see what is imposter syndrome. And basically that's the result that I came up. Basically, two American psychologists, basically, they gave it a name in 1978, are people who are basically feeling that holiness, that they have achieved a lot, but they feel like that they're fake and they're going to be caught. So the two important things is that they have been very high achiever. They have achieved a lot. And the other factor is the fear of being caught. And it's very widespread. 75% of that people are there. So if I say, I'm an imposter, I feel, 75% of you would agree with me. So I feel okay. And I think one thing that they always say is that according to my very short research, that it's more common with people who don't have a sense of belonging. They feel like they're different. So for example, if you're in a board meeting and you're the only woman in that board meeting, you might feel like that I don't belong here. That's why, I would get caught, if they realize. And if I say something out of ordinary, they might catch that I'm not really belonging here. And actually it impacts people who really have worked a lot and achieved a lot, because they went from, that's why the society thinks they don't belong, because there are few of them, and because they have achieved a lot of that. And that's why it's more common, because when you don't feel belonging, you don't think that you are. So let me share you another another insight about my other only things about psychology as well. So I have twin daughters who are 15 years old. So about 10 years ago, when they were 5, I went to a parenting class, not a class, a seminar. And they were talking, there was this discussion about the mindset, the growth mindset and fixed mindset. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. It's very, it's very well known. But as a mom, it was very actually counterintuitive for me, because what they were telling us is that as you're, having your kid grow up, you should not tell them you're smart. Actually, we have a word that S word. We are not saying anybody's smart, because if you have a kid who goes to school, elementary school, and gets a very good grade and come home and says, wow, you're so smart, they think, okay, it's because who I am, I'm very well. And when they get to high school and they don't get a very good grade, they come home and they say, okay, I'm not smart anymore. That's not like nothing I can do. It's who I am. So the idea is that you should basically be grateful for the work they do and be thankful for that. Say, wow, you did a great work. Actually, I don't know how well I did that as a mom, because one day my 4th grader, I told her, wow, Nikki, you did so well. You worked so hard. I'm so happy you get such a good grade. And she told me, no, I didn't work hard. So it really backfired. You should know how to give the praises. But anyway, so the idea is that having the growth mindset, people who are successful are the people who have the growth mindset, the people who go out of their way. They try new things. They achieve they go out of their comfort zone. So with that, I think there's the good news is that I think all of the people, everybody who's here, you should have a growth mindset to be making to this level. You have always achieved a lot of things. So people who usually might be feeling more sense of not belonging and the imposter syndrome, they actually should have done a lot because they achieved a lot. And you have that growth mindset. So you should be feeling, happy that you can do a lot of things. And don't let the society, there's always pressure, but don't let them, limit your growth. But one thing that I learned also as a person and as a mom, you're who you are. You have to learn how to deal with it. And how do you navigate your own character? And these are the tips that I actually try to use on my own growth. So I just want to share some of them with you. So one thing is, as we started to talk about imposter syndrome, is the fear of being caught. So as Lily was mentioning, it's very, very important to be authentic, to be yourself. And the authentic yourself might mean that you ask questions, you understand things. And actually, a little bit of fear is good because it gives you the adrenaline rush. Otherwise, you would not have that excitement. You would not be doing well. So a little bit of it good. And also look at the bright side. It's much better to be confident and humble rather than being overconfident and jerk. Because nobody wants to work with somebody who is super overconfident and is jerk. People don't like. So you use that. Don't let fear paralyze you. Use a little bit of fear, get the adrenaline rush, and go with humility and solve hard problems. And then you can achieve a lot. That's what worked for me. The other thing, one of my favorite quotes is that luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. So I think everybody in this room have worked a lot and you guys are very prepared. And of course, you have to consider, continue working more and getting more and more prepared. But the important part is that make sure you seize and create the opportunity. Because no matter how prepared you are, if the opportunity is not given to you, or if you're not seizing the opportunity, you won't get lucky. So, and that opportunity means working in a startup that is going to fail, but you learn a lot, or working in another startup that is going to make it. Any opportunity. But the important thing is that we should all get out of our comfort zone. And a lot of you are leaders. Look around and find how you can give opportunity to other people. If you have somebody who did very well and get out of their comfort zone, even though they might feel a little bit insecure or so on, praise them and give them the opportunity. And that's how we can basically be changing that. And I'm actually stealing. I feel like an imposter again. No, it was subconsciously. Act like you belong. It's very important. What does it mean to be acting like you belong? It's that don't let your insecurity take over. Because if your insecurity take over, you become defensive. You feel like that you have to hide something, and be curious. It's very valuable. Everybody, actually, in my previous company, when I told them I'm leaving, one of our teams, which were not reporting to me, they were actually a team in Israel. One of the data scientists were in the office, and he said, "Shadi, I want to say goodbye to you." And we went and he said, "Shadi, we quote you." So what do you mean we quote you? Says that, when we have been in meetings with you, you always say that, for my curiosity, can you please explain this thing to me? And we always, in our meetings, as Shadi says, for my curiosity, can you please explain this to me? So I think, and to me, it's very natural. I'm curious. I try to learn. There's a lot of things to learn. And not every technical discussion I go, I know. Not every business meeting I go, I know everything. It's just, I feel like I'm constantly learning. So if you have that mindset and don't let your insecurity take over, you can be actually feeling like a different. So I think the important thing is not to get defensive. And then you will belong. You will be somebody that you're doing similar to what Wade was saying. And I think the most important thing that we all have to be agents of change. So if you get thank you. If you get an email that come and talk at the conference, before reading that email, respond and say, yes, I'm going to come. And then you'll deal with it. But I think it's very important to be that agent of change. If you feel like that you're looking around, that there's somebody that you can help them grow, I think that's very, very fulfilling. And I always say that when I left again my previous company, the best email that I got was from wife of one of my, somebody that I hired from college and then he eventually grew. And he said that Billy has grown so much that I feel like that, he's even in his interaction with the kids, I see a lot of improvement. So when you help people through that, their journey, that's very fulfilling. So to be that, we have to be agent of change, identify people that you can help them, make sure you recognize them, give them opportunity, push them a little bit, and to get them, be more comfortable. And with that, we can make a lot of changes. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much.